President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Before the chamber hands over the floor to the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chia to resume the questioning, the chamber now issue its oral ruling in relation to the objection before the break time in relation to the questioning of this witness. The ruling is to ensure that the proceeding in relation to questioning goes smoothly. To deal with the issue, the chambers now hand over the floor to Judge Lavange. You may now proceed, Judge Lavange.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. This morning, Counsel Copé referred to the statement of a person called Anne Sopip. Anne Sopip had been the subject of an interview by the organization called DCCAM. That statement had to do with the existence of a possible plot to overthrow Pol Pot, a plot that had been orchestrated by Sao Pim and other officials from the East Zone. The prosecutor pointed out that the sources of information from Anne Sopip were confessions of persons arrested and detained at S21. Having reviewed the interview of Anne Sopip, the chamber notes that the person interested or concerned was aware of the fact that people of the East Zone were responsible for certain events and that they had been arrested and that they had confessed. However, the chamber at this stage in the trial cannot determine with certainty that the information from Anne Sopip or information in her knowledge are the root of the confessions from S21. The chamber can only say that the origins of such information is uncertain and unclear. Having pointed this out, the chamber authorizes the counsel for Nguyen Chia to ask questions that they put to the witness this morning.
President, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. Are you ready now? Witness, yes, I am ready, Mr. President. President, the floor is now handed over to the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chia to resume the questioning. You may now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I return to the DC Camp statement of PEEP, maybe I should finish the subject that I was discussing with the witness before the lunch break, so that the transcript can be read coherently. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. You're still there?
Witness, I am ready now, counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Before the break, we were speaking about the three different categories of prisoners within Okan Seng. I have one follow-up question in this respect. Have you ever heard at around June 1978 about a guidance or guideline of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Kampuchea on the party's policy toward misled persons, persons who have been accused of being traitors, either working for Vietnam or possibly the CIA slash the Americans. There was a whole new guideline as to how to treat the various people who were implicated. Does that sound familiar to you? A guidance or a guideline, more particularly of June 20, 1978?
Answer: I was aware of this guideline from SAI.
And can you tell us what you did after June 20, 1978 to implement this guideline? What happened in Okan Seng in relation to the people who were at that time and subsequently detained?
Answer: from that time onward, the minor prisoners were allowed to go to work at a far location. As I informed the chamber yesterday, they were allowed to go to work the field along Road 19, close to the border.
But do you remember whether there was an evaluation of each and every prisoner detained at the moment this guidance of the Central Committee of the CPK came out? In other words, did you discuss with others each and every prisoner who was detained at that time?
Answer: I did not happen to talk to those people.
But how was this new guideline implemented? The guideline to be much more lenient toward people who were considered before that guideline as having committed treason. What did you do to make sure that this guideline was properly implemented in Okan Seng?
Answer: in relation to the implementation of the guideline, it was more lenient. That is to say, food ration has to be provided to prisoners sufficiently in an appropriate manner. And the prisoners who went to work with me at Kup Kong were allowed to eat whatever they found, and we were allowed to eat in a communal manner.
I will move on. I'm not entirely sure if I fully understand your answer. Let me now turn to the subject of release of prisoners. You said that more toward 1979 prisoners were released. But once you found out after interrogating a prisoner that he had no connections or that he wasn't involved in any forms of treason, would these people then be released, or would they still be detained at Okan Seng?
Answer: For the remainder of the prisoners, they were released to go to work.
Let me read to you an excerpt from Jamsay, E3/407, his answer to question 6. And I just want to make sure that you're saying what he is saying too. Or not, then just give a reaction, please, Mr. Witness. So he says here, sometimes Tasarun called me to meet with him. There, he instructed me to examine the people who had been implicated carefully. If, after being examined, we found that the prisoners had no real connection, we re-educated them and released them. As for the prisoners who were found to have a real connection, we detained them in the cell. I did not recall who the confessions I had received belonged to. Mr. Witness, Chamsai seems to be speaking about people after being examined. They were re-educated and then they were released. Released in I suppose in a normal understanding of the word would be that that these people would be sent back to their villages or the cooperatives. What exactly does the word release mean when you use that word?
Regarding the release, in that period, they were released to work within the compound of Organ Science Security Center. The release was applied to the prisoners who had minor offenses.
Very well. Let me now move on to the subject from before the lunch break, Mr. Witness, and that is PEEP's statement to DC Cam. Just to refresh your memory, let me read again the excerpt that I had originally put to you. I'm going to read her statement and then I will ask your reaction. To be clear, Mr. President, this is E319/23.4.1, English ERN 01079524, and Khmer 00932019. So this is what PEEP tells the DC Chem investigator. Division 14 controlled the royal palace. Other places were also controlled by Division 14. Pol Pot trusted Tassan very much because Tassan's division took care of his security and safety. Sao Pim actually wanted to destroy Pol Pot from the time of the victory over Phnom Penh. However, there were Tassan and Tarun. Question, those two Ta? Answer, yes. And then Chamsay enters the conversation and he says, Sao Pim held a bigger position in the party. And then his wife says, they did not get on well after the victory. Question, from 75? Yes, from 1975. Can you please give a reaction, Mr. Witness, as to this statement from Peep and her husband Chamsay?
Answer. I know that Pip was Chamsai's wife. She was a medic in a company. Regarding her testimony, I think that her testimony is a bit abroad. She may have known much more than me, and it is the recollection of what happened in that period. It is confined to her recollection and story, so I do not know about what she described.
Very well. Let me see if I read to you a few more specific excerpts. Maybe that is something that you heard at the time from other division members. She talks 2 pages down, English ERN 01079526 and Khmer 00932021. She talks about Pol Pot's bodyguards and Division 801's role in protecting Pol Pot and delivering the bodyguards. Say says his bodyguards, around him, Pol Pot, there were 4 or 5 of them. Peep, his bodyguards and people from our division. Say, he only went around with the division. He dared not go outside. He did not trust others. And then the question from DC Cam, was there any signs that someone wanted to kill him? And then Say says, there had been 2 or 3 explosions already, but he was safe. Later on, his messenger was injured. Those people protected him. When did the explosions happen? Do you remember? Near Phnom Penh. Mr. Witness, here again, Cham Sai and Peep, his wife, both belonging to the same division as you, talked about people, soldiers trying to kill Pol Pot, and that there had already been 2 or 3 explosions in Phnom Penh, injuring a messenger. Have you heard anything about explosions in Phnom Penh, attempts to assassinate Pol Pot?
Answer. After the liberation of 17 April 1975, I was living and working in Divisional Headquarters 701. I was not there the whole 12 months. I had to go and perform my tasks in Ratnagiri province. While I was at the headquarters, I have never heard about the gunshots or explosion as described.
On that very same page, Cham Sai talks about shootings and conflicts being broken out at the Olympic Stadium. He says literally the following: yes, the 2nd and 3rd conflicts broke out at Olympic Stadium, but bullets were not fired. The bodyguards were quite protective. That was because of PIM, or the contemptible PIM. You mentioned earlier this morning, Mr. Witness, that your division was involved in hosting a big meeting in the Olympic Stadium. You yourself were not active, but have you ever heard of any violent actions or conflicts or shootings taking place at the Olympic Stadium?
Answer. As I told the court earlier, after the liberation, up to the day that I left Phnom Penh for another location, I have never heard any explosions as told by Sai.
And then the last example, that's the page, one English page further, 010795227, and Khmer 0093222. Say presumably moves in time 1 year, going to 1977. And then he says the following, and I quote, "The one who was arrested was a skilled shooter. He could shoot any target he wanted. However, he did not succeed in killing Pol Pot when he stood up to make a declaration of the existence of the Communist Party of Kampuchea." Pol Pot, the evidence shows, made this statement in September 77. Have you ever heard of any failed attempt to kill Pol Pot when he made a declaration on the existence of the CPK?
Answer. In early or late 1977, Sai moved to live and worked in Organized Security Center in March 1977. He moved to Ratnagiri to be in charge of Organized Security Center. How could he learn about what happened in Phnom Penh? I do not really understand his account.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to ask him this very question at one point in time, Mr. Witness. Let me now move back to Okon Seng. And that's your earlier testimony as to the number of prisoners. You said today that you cannot really recall the exact number, more than 100, maybe less than 200. Let me confront you with what Cham Say told the investigators of the co-investigating judge, E3/405, question and answer A8. He talked about approximately 50 to 70 prisoners in early 77 and throughout 77. And he says that by 1978 the number of prisoners had increased to more than 100. Would you be in a position to say whether his estimate between 50 and 100 would be an accurate estimate?
Answer. It is my understanding that the testimony of Cham Sai is another account. He had overall supervision at the center. I was simply a member of the center. Therefore, I do not know the exact number of prisoners in the center. I was simply a member and tasked with taking notes of the confession.
I understand, Mr. Witness, but you were the number 2 or number 3 in the hierarchy of people in charge of that security center. Presumably you were walking there every day, you were working there every day. Is his estimate about right, or is it maybe too little, or is it too many? Can you give us some estimate of your own?
Answer: I told the estimated figure already to the court. Compared my estimate to that of Chai, the number appears not much different from one another.
Now, yesterday you said that your recollection about maybe 10 people who were detained in 77 and 78 might have died from either malaria or dysentery. Do you recall who these people were? Can you remember anyone from these 10 people that might have died because of malaria or dysentery?
Answer: I cannot recall the name. I cannot recall those names. What I can recall is that they were from unions. I'm sorry, I cannot recall their names.
How were you able to establish that the people you said who that died from malaria died because they were infected with malaria at your security center? Would it have been possible, let's talk about the example of the rubber plantation union workers, that they had already malaria while working, while having worked at those rubber plantations?
Malaria was a common disease in Ratanakiri province. I myself was contracted to malaria, and if the treatment was not proper, then the person would die.
But you, as the number 2 or 3, were responsible for the proper treatment of someone who got sick from malaria. Is that correct?
Tim was the deputy to Sai, and he was in charge of the security at Okonsan Security Center. So he and Sai knew more about the well-being or the health of the detainees. I simply made records of or take note of the confessions or responses of the prisoners.
Let me try it differently, Mr. Witness. You said that you yourself had malaria. When were you infected with malaria? Was that before 1975?
I had malaria after I arrived in Ratanakiri province. So first I had diarrhea and then malaria.
And what did you do to treat yourself from malaria and the diarrhea? What was the medicine that the medic gave you in order to recuperate?
Before I left Phnom Penh for Ratanakiri province, I received information through the dissemination, the division that Ratanakiri was infested with malaria. So then I tried to obtain some medicines in the preparation for my trip to Ratanakiri province. I had some quinine and chlorophene with me, and actually there were some people who had knowledge in the medicine at the headquarters.
Let me ask it more broad. You said Ratanakiri was infested with malaria. If one of the security guards within Okanseng or any member of Division 801 was struck and got sick from malaria, what kind of treatment would this person get?
The person would be treated by a medic who was there at the security center.
Was that the same medic that also treated the prisoners when they got sick from malaria?
Yes, the person who was competent in the medical treatment provided the treatment to both workers and the detainees.
And did this medic also give the same treatment to prisoners as to security guards when either one of them got sick from dysentery?
When a prisoner got sick, the medic would give medicine to that detainee. The medicine was homemade by the division. However, we also had some modern medicine provided to us by Battalion 806.
But is it fair to say that whenever a prisoner got sick, either from malaria or from dysentery, he or she would get the same treatment as a member of the security guards or any member, for that matter, of Division 801?
Yes, that is correct.
You said Ratanakiri was infested with malaria. did a lot of people within Division 801 or anybody, any cadre who was stationed in Ratanakiri, was there a large number that died of malaria because being untreated? Did that happen to Division 801 soldiers as well?
Soldiers in all the regiments who were stationed as assigned, namely Regiment 81, 82 or 83, many of them had malaria during 1976 and 77, so they had to be treated at a hospital in Ban Lung, and a large number of them actually died from malaria.
So would it be fair to say that people dying from malaria in the prison had nothing to do with the prison situation as such, but just with the fact that Ratanakiri was infested with malaria?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that the same applies to dysentery caused by drinking unclean water?
As for dysentery, the cause of dysentery was the virus or parasite in the unboiled water, and that was the cause of the sickness of dysentery.
I understand that. That's what you testified to this morning, but is it correct that Division 801 soldiers also sometimes died because of dysentery?
The most challenging disease facing soldiers in late 76 and 77 was the infestation of malaria, and many soldiers hate that.
Let me move on because of the time, Mr. Witness. Is it correct that at one point in time prisoners escaped from Okanseng?
Yes, that is correct. That's what I stated yesterday. One prisoner escaped from Okanseng security center. He ran through a village nearby and was arrested by those villagers, and he was brought in to the center.
That is indeed the example that you gave, but is it correct that a multiple amount of prisoners escaped, so more than one prisoner escaped? Or was it only this one example?
Through my recollection, there was this example that prisoner Mao escaped, and there was another event that a prisoner also escaped, but I cannot recall the name. Also, one of the Jerai prisoners escaped. However, he was recaptured.
Thank you. An additional question to the prisoners or the people who were allowed to work outside to plant vegetables and potatoes, etc. The people that were working outside, were they allowed also to eat the vegetables and the potatoes that they planted and that they took care of?
In fact, the potato and the vegetables that they grew were meant to be used at the kitchen in the Okonsan Security Center.
Did most food come from the vegetables and potatoes that the prisoners grew?
The rice was given to us from the division. We also have MSG and fermented fish. We also have vegetables and potatoes. And in fact, the rice given to us was not sufficient, so we had to mix the potatoes with rice. And we consume those vegetables and the potatoes that they grew.
And those potatoes and vegetables, etc., that was grown on the compound of Okonsan, was that enough to feed everyone? Enough to feed not only the guards but also the prisoners?
As for the vegetable, sometimes we had a surplus, so we actually deliver it to the division and sometimes to the soldiers at the battlefields.
So is it then fair for me to say that within Okonsan, both prisoners and security personnel had enough to eat?
Witness, please hold on. And International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Thank you. This is a question that has been posed in a rather vague and generic way. I'm not sure that the foundation was established to put that question, which resembles a conclusion more than anything else. Because, first of all, there were different kinds of prisoners with different regimes. Some were subjected to harsh treatment, some were subjected to less severe treatment. So it's not sure that the prisoners subjected to severe treatment were eating the same thing as the prisoners subjected to harsh treatment. So you should maybe put the question regarding the quantity that was offered or the physical appearance of the prisoners in order to conclude whether or not they had enough to eat. There was a lot of testimony about this. People speak about skeletal appearance, so maybe you should make the witness provide more detail about the physical appearance of the prisoners before drawing the conclusion of whether or not they had enough to eat.
I'm not sure how to react to this objection, Mr. President. It's my cross, it's my examination, and I think I'm entitled to ask the witness the question because he was in charge of Okonsan, and the question is very simple. In his recollection, did both prisoners and security personnel, in his recollection, have enough to eat?
However, it is my view that the nature of your last question is leading, and you do not give the witness an option to respond. So please reformulate your question so that a leading type is not used.
I will reformulate it into two options, Mr. President, if that's all right with you. Mr. Witness, in your recollection, did prisoners and security personnel have enough to eat, or they didn't have enough to eat?
Prisoners and guards had the same food ration, maybe a little bit less or more. Basically, it's the same.
Just to be sure, did your guards ever complain to you that they didn't have enough food?
Guards never protested for the lack of food.
And if the guards had more or less the same food as the prisoners, is it then correct if I say the prisoners had enough to eat as well?
Except those prisoners who were seriously ill that they could not eat.
Of course, I understand that. It's difficult to eat when you're very sick. Let me move on, Mr. Witness, to one small issue. There was a witness who came to testify here, actually two witnesses who came to testify and who were at one point in time detained at Okan Seng. And they talked about a story of a gallbladder hanging in the kitchen, presumably to scare people. Have you ever heard of such a thing in your prison?
I did not know anything about that.
More specifically, there was a security guard, knock, hanging in the kitchen, something that might have been a human gallbladder, trying to scare prisoners by saying that he was in the habit of eating human gallbladders. Is that a story that you've ever heard? A story that might have taken place in your prison?
No.
At the Old Consign Security Center, that is during late 1978 or early 1979, Tin, a prisoner from the Union, with a few others to lay traps to catch a wild boar who came to the potato plantation to eat and destroy those potatoes. and usually they would catch one or two wild boar. That's all I know, but I did not know anything about human gallbladder.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. I will move on to the next subject. Yesterday, you were asked a question about prisoners doing certain jobs to assist the security guards. I'm not quite sure whether your answer was very clear to me. But do you know whether prisoners were ever used to guard certain areas, to stand guard, and as such replacing the security guards in their functions?
They could assist during the night shift. That is, they would assist those guards whose turn was at night. However, there were only a few of them who assisted the guard in their night shift.
And do you remember who they were? Which prisoners were assisting the guards at night?
There were Tin, Thun, and Sia. Sia was a former medic from the division.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Now let me move on to what I believe will be my last subject, and that is the fate of the 100 or so Jurai. Yesterday, you were asked questions by the prosecution in relation to the Jurai, and at around 15:38 in the afternoon, you said, and I quote literally, so I assume that perhaps the ethnic Jurai had been killed at that location, meaning the jackfruit location. So you're saying, so I assume that perhaps the ethnic Jurai had been killed at that location. Is that indeed what you said yesterday, and is that indeed what you intended to say?
My testimony yesterday was the truth about what happened to the Jarai people.
Let me try it differently. Mr. Witness, were you yourself involved in the actual killing of those Jurai people? Did you, with a weapon or any other means, physically kill or were involved in the physical act of killing of those Jurai?
Duty Council, Mr. President, may I? President, yes, you may proceed. Duty Counsel, this question is to incriminate my client, so my client cannot respond to that. President, Duty Counsel, please consult with your client to get his instruction. It is not you who decides that your client does not need to respond. You are there to consult with him and to take his instruction. Please consult with him and inform the chamber the decision by the witness. Duty Counsel, thank you, Mr. President. Witness, I never personally commit any act of killing any human being.
Did you, with your own eyes, see the actual physical killing of the Jurai in front of you? Did you see people killing the Jurai in front of you or close by to you so that you could physically witness it?
No, I did not.
Did you order anyone to physically kill those Jurai? Did you give a military order or any order to have those Jurai killed?
Witness, please hold on, and International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a repetitive question. Yesterday, the witness said that he had a meeting with Susarin, during which Susarin said to say unto the witness that they had to take measures, and that taking measures meant to smash the Jarai. And in the extract I had read out, which was confirmed by the witness, it was stated that when they returned to Al Singh, orders were issued that the Jarai be effectively killed. That is why I think this question is repetitive.
It's not at all repetitive, Mr. President. He indeed talked about presumably a meeting where it was discussed that the Jarai should be dealt with, but that of course still needs to be implemented if that was indeed discussed. So my question was not related to that possible conversation that the witness might have had, but the actual physical order, either verbal or in a written form, to the people who actually presumably killed those Jarai. There's a difference between those two, so my question is not repetitive.
President, Mr. Witness, please respond to the question if you wish to do so. In case you exercise your rights not to respond because of the nature of the question, which may incriminate you that you committed the crime, you have the right to say so. So it depends on you to answer or not. You have the duty counsel with you over there, and please consult with your duty counsel whether or not you want to answer the question. Witness, could counsel repeat the question once again? I do not really get it.
No problem, Mr. Witness. The evidence seems to suggest that the Jirai who were detained at Okan Seng were possibly killed. You didn't do the actual killing, you didn't witness the killing. However, presumably the people who did kill received orders or instructions. My question to you is, were you the one who ordered the killing of those Jirai?
President, so what is your decision, Mr. Witness? You want to give your answer to the question that whether or not you gave an order to the security guards to bring ethnic Jarai to be killed. That is the question. The order in the question is that whether or not you directly order to bring those Jarai to be killed. So this is a incriminating question against you. So you may decide to answer to the question. You once answered a question which incriminates you a while ago. So now I am telling you as the President of the Chamber that this question is incriminating you, may incriminate you in the executing of the actions during the democratic Cambodia, particularly during the time that you were working at Okan Seng Security Center. Do you understand that, Mr. Witness? If you understand my explanation, you can decide to answer or not. So I have explained to you already about this question. Answer. I do not respond to the question, Mr. President.
Let me read to you, Mr. Witness, something that maybe duty counsel should not advise his client when the microphone is on.
President, you have been working as a duty counsel so far, so you should have understand your role as a duty counsel, and the consultation should be done in confidential manner, and then the decision can be made by the witness whether or not he wants to answer the question. When the witness consults with you, you should turn off the microphone, the confidentiality is that you two should discuss among yourselves, not to allow the public to be informed of your discussions. So be informed of that, Duty Counsel. You may now resume your questioning, Counsel Copper.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, Cham Se has talked to investigators of the investigating judge about the Jurai, and I would like to read to you a few excerpts from his WRI. Mr. President, more particularly E3/9459, questions and answer 24, 26, 27. Let me start with question and answer 24. So Cham Se is saying the following, Mr. Witness. At the time, the Jurai people came from Vietnam, and they were taken to be killed in Ban Lung. At the time, soldiers came and borrowed my place in Ban Lung to kill those people. 26. Yes, the Jurai people were coming from Vietnam, and then soldiers stationed along the ready borderline of Division 801, Regiment 81, arrested and brought them here. Question: who killed the Jurai people? Answer: the military who had brought the Jurai people there were the killers. It was not the sector's military. And in his testimony in 2.1, that is E1/177.1, at around 9:53, he says that the capture of the 100 Jurai was the sole discretion of Ta Su Sarun. Mr. Witness, Cham Se might be shedding some lights on who was responsible for the alleged killing of the Jurai. Could you give a reaction to his testimony? Were the Jurai killed by the soldiers who had brought them in earlier, or was it, or were the killers other people?
Answer: regarding the killings of Jurai people, that task was performed by Tin, the deputy of Sai.
So are you saying that Cham Se is not telling the truth then? Or what are you saying? Is Cham Se's testimony incorrect?
Answer: I can only tell what I have known. I cannot tell anything beyond my knowledge.
I agree, Mr. Witness, but I'm trying to establish whether Cham Se is shifting the responsibility away to soldiers from Division 801 who had arrested the Jurai, or whether he himself, through his deputy, was somehow involved in the order of the killing.
ក្នុង
Answer. We performed our tasks based on our assigned duties.
Yes. Question mark. Is there anything you would like to add, Mr. Witness? Are you saying that Cham Se was involved in the ordering of the killing, or is he right, and was it rather the military who had brought the Jirai people in who were involved?
Answer. I did not implicate anyone, and I do not shift my responsibility to anyone. At Organ Science Security Center, we performed our duty as assigned, so we had different tasks to do. President, thank you, Mr. Witness. It is now break time. The chamber will take a short break from now until 3:05. And Mr. Witness, please be present at the place where you are sitting now before 3:05. So we will resume at 3:05. The court is now in recess.